anytime I hear James Vincent McMorrow's music, I get chills up and down my spine, but I'm not the only one. His music has had over 750 million streams. It's topped Irish charts. And it was even one of his songs, Me and My Friends, was used by Busy Phillips as her theme song for her talk show. I'm thrilled to say that James is back with his gorgeous new single, Gone. And it's great to be chatting to you, James. Thanks so much for taking the time out.
No problem at all. What else would I be doing? I mean, my schedule is stacked, but I found the time.
well, thank you for finding some time, and especially to talk about Gone, because I'm absolutely loving it. And you've said that it was the song is about the disintegration of relationships, but what I find really interesting is the relationship you're talking about is a relationship with yourself.
Yeah, I think this whole album revolves around the idea of like just I don't know, becoming a little bit more at peace with the reality of life, rather than constantly trying to find things to make, or like to, you know, find some kind of realization in things, and like, oh, if I just had that one extra thing, it might make all the difference. That might suddenly lead to this enlightenment that I've been told will happen for me. And I just kind of got to a point where I was like, if I keep looking for this stuff, then I'm gonna miss the things that are happening. And I know that sounds cliche as it comes out of my mouth, but it's true. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so much of life is aspirational, and that's good. That keeps the world turning. It keeps me moving. But at the same time, I've missed a lot of stuff because I'm just sort of like very like process orientated. I'm like, the thing is what I need to do, rather than the person that I need to be is worth finding. It's always like, if I do the thing, that will make the person. So I just tried to stop that and write songs about it a bit.
You're actually so right, because the phrase that keeps coming into my head, and one that I tend to use a lot, and now that I think about it, it's almost like a put down. It's like, oh no, we just keep faking it till we make it. And if you're faking it till you make it, you're not really making it, are you? Because you're not really living what you're supposed to be living.
No, and like imposter syndrome is a huge part of a lot of people's lives. Certainly a huge part of my life. I used to look at other musicians. I would play a lot of festivals, and you'd see people, and I would be like, how are they so like different? I never felt necessarily part of any sort of like fraternity of people. I always felt a little isolated because they didn't act or feel the way they felt. And I always thought the same as what you said, that like eventually the penny would drop and I would wake up one morning and feel like this professional musician with those stats. You know, you say things like 750 million streams, and I'm like, that's great. Like, that should make me feel like a success. And empirically speaking, I guess I am successful, but I don't think of myself that way. And I always hated that. I always wanted desperately to feel like those other people that I saw. And then you just kind of think, well, maybe they're faking it too. Like, maybe we're all just faking it. Maybe everybody is in this like perpetual round of like, I need to look a certain way and act a certain way in order to be seen a certain way, because the way that the world is constructed is so forward facing now. And it just made me think, well, maybe everyone else is feeling the same way that I do. And maybe if I write an album about that, there might be some resonance there, that rather than everybody going on Instagram every morning and seeing people living, especially this year where you see people like living these really blissful lives. And I'm like, where are you that you're doing this? Because I've been in my house for a year, and it creates this cognitive dissonance, which is hard to deal with. And I've just trying to make music that connects with people. When you listen to Gone, it should feel belligerent. You shouldn't be listening to it going, yeah, you know, tropical sunsets. It's like the world is crazy, but and kind of messed up, but there's beauty in the chaos of it all. And trying to find that feels a lot more beneficial to me right now, mentally speaking, than trying to find some tropical island somewhere.
I love that you said there's beauty in the chaos of it all, because that sort of that links to the new album you're putting out. Because, you know, when you hear someone's putting it out an album, and people are like, so James, tell me about the story, tell me about the theme, and how does it all run together? And I love that you've said that, you know, the thing that holds this whole album together is it is chaotic, but I am the one that holds it together. There doesn't need to be genres or a story. I am the story and the connection.
Yeah, that's been my whole career. I've just kind of realized it more like readily with this album. Like, people have always like used it almost as a stick to beat me with a little bit, that like, oh, what's James gonna do now? You know what I mean? Like, you know, Me and My Friends was a wholly different experience to the album True Care that came before it. The album before that was like me with a lot of my friends that work in the rap world, making like beats essentially, and me and writing songs over them. And the album before that was me in a studio in Texas, like for 3 months, making this slightly strange, I guess, experiential record. And rather than like, you know, that's just what I want to do. I don't want to be linear, because life isn't linear. The idea of making music that's the same and progresses, but it's incremental, it seems dull to me. And I'm not insulting anybody that chooses to do that, because there are people who are masters of their craft. You know what I mean? There's like
Yeah.
bands in Ireland. Someone asked me the other day about like my folk roots, and I was like, my folk roots are the fact that I liked Neil Young as a child. You know, my dad had Neil Young records and I ignored them, and then I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. That was the beginning and ending of it. There's bands like Lankum that are like these like folk, like pure blood people. You know what I mean? They have it in their bones, and they'll be doing it forever, and they'll get better at it, and it's like a mastery of a craft. That's not what I'm in this for. Like I feel like I am a master of my craft, but my craft is chaos. My craft is songwriting. I'm a pop songwriter, like I always have been. I just like exploring different paradigms and different like musical agendas, and because that's what I grew up doing, anecdotally. So the idea of doing anything different seems ludicrous to me, but people often use it as this thing. They're like, you know, why don't James settle on something? And it's like, why would you? If you're a painter, you're not going to just paint the same flowers for the rest of your life. Or if you're like Steven Spielberg, you're not like, you're not on Jaws 47. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's like there has to be like growth and exponential change. It's required.
But is it for them? Sometimes I think people ask that question of, but why won't he just put himself into a box? So when I'm writing this article, it just makes it so much easier.
Yeah, and listen, I get that. Like I would be hypocritical if I didn't say that sometimes people, I love release music that challenges me, and I'm like, oh, I loved when they did that thing. And it takes a minute to get your head around it, but often those are the things that I love the best. So like a band that I was obsessed with when I was just starting out was the band the National, and like they made that album The Boxer right when I was sort of starting to come through. And then the High Violet record, I was obsessed with those albums, and then they sort of changed it up and they were doing different things, and I kind of drifted away from it. But now I go back and listen to their albums, and the ones that I drifted away from are the ones that I love. And so like I understand the impetus. I understand that if you like acoustic guitar, you want acoustic guitar. And if you aren't, you know, someone that dives deep on music and you're not like looking at motifs below the surface, like that's fine. I don't do that. But it's all I would ever say is like, yeah, give things a minute. Like, you know, it's music should push a button and it should push things forward. Like that's what it's inherently designed to do. So if you're listening to something and it gives you the same thing over and over again, it's not really serving you. It's not doing you justice. It's certainly not doing me justice. So.
Well, I love that you said that in one of your Instagram posts. You put up a post about, you know, the past, it was a few weeks ago, and you're like, over the last 6 weeks, it's been amazing because I have been able to get creative. And this year has been tough for a lot of us because we feel like we've been stuck in a rut. But the line that stuck out, and it's what you've been saying now, is that this year you felt that possibilities seem limitless again, and that in a year where possibility has been largely curtailed for all of us, this feels more important than ever.
Yeah, I mean, that I think the year has been like an absolute
shit show.
Yeah, like listen, call it what it is. And in the beginning there was that sort of like, you know, I'm going to learn 7 languages and I'm going to better myself, you know, mentally and physically. And then it was everybody watching Tiger King and watching The Last Dance and like not doing anything. And you forgive yourself that stuff. You should let yourself off the hook because it's that year. And then it sort of opened up again during the summer and you're like, okay, cool, possibility is there again. I just kind of saw my window of opportunity to like, I guess, forward the conversation for music in Ireland, not in like a sanctimonious way. Like I understand my position in music is a position of privilege. And I would be like really, it would be like to not turn around and try and acknowledge that and say, listen, there's amazing music here. There's an amazing music scene here. It might need some people like me to act as conduits between all these different people. So like I saw possibility in that this year, and I've, you know, that's where like that Denise Chila and Circa Richardson song that I made Out the Gaff came from.
Love it.
Yeah,
Song of the year for me.
Oh, thank you. I loved doing that stuff. Like I see limitless possibility in Ireland, to be honest, in a way that I didn't. beforehand, and I think that that's my bad. It's like I fall into that camp of people that when it comes time to make music, I'm like, it's time to go to LA, it's time to go to London, because those are the possibilities afforded to me. And this year, none of those have been afforded to me. And you can either sit around and cry about it, or you can like realize that you actually have been part of the problem for a while. That like by me removing myself from the musical infrastructure here, when it comes time to make music, it creates this perpetual cycle of people thinking, I got to go there and I got to work with that person. Whereas there's just so many amazing musicians here. Like that room of people that I put together for Out the Gaff was just like Circa was on the radio yesterday talking about, I've produced her new single Starlight Lounge that comes out on Friday, and she was talking about it on radio yesterday, and she was just like, it was like a party because we haven't been able to go to parties. Like we were in this big studio and there were 7 or 8 of us, and we were just bouncing off the rooms, and everyone was going into other rooms and playing stuff for each other. And I've been lucky, I've gotten to do that for a long time, go to studios in LA and go to studios in Miami and all these places and have those experiences. And it doesn't exist here, but not because of a talent pool, just because I guess, yeah, like people like me do need to turn around and facilitate the situation. So I'm seeing a lot of like that possibility there for Irish music in a way that I probably didn't. And that's my bad. It's not because it wasn't there. It's just because I wasn't really thinking about my place in it.
Yeah, well, this is the one positive to come out of this year, and there have been a few positives, but one of them is that it's enabled us to reflect and see the possibilities. And one of the possibilities is that the media all over the world has gone, you know what, we need to do things differently. So you were on the Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and usually you'd be in studio, but you were able to actually show off a piece of Dublin, record your performance at the Palace, and you've said, like, you would never have thought that that would have been one of your all-time favorite TV performances.
It was by a length. It was my all-time favorite. TV is a funny thing. It's like there's a compromise there that exists between like the filming aspect and the recording aspect. Usually, record like visually outweighs sonics. Like that's the reality of it. So if you go on Jules Holland, it's an amazing show. It sounds really good, but you're still at the mercy of like the camera crews to a degree. And that's just the way it is. I remember we did Kimmel a few years ago, and I just didn't nail it. And I didn't nail it because the situation was really rushed. It's my fault, but it was just one of those learning curves where I said coming out of that, if I ever get to go on TV again and do more stuff, I'm going to make sure that I deliver it exactly how I want to. And this has just afforded us that possibility because I found the TV crew to film this. I found the location with like my team, and we put together the package for it ourselves. So we were kind of given an opportunity to do something special. So if it wasn't the best thing, it would have been a massive disappointment because I really put myself in a position where I needed to succeed. And I love it. Like Gar O'Rourke, who directed it, he shot it in one take, and we did like 15, 16 takes of it. And it was the closest I've gotten to playing live this year, because it felt like, oh my God, if I mess up, then, we got to go back and set to one and go again. And that happened a few times, and it just meant that there was like I can see energy in it that I couldn't see in a TV performance otherwise. So like, I absolutely love it. Like, as you said, we got to shoot in a bar. The people that own the bar were there. They were so lovely to us. It was heartbreaking to a degree to like listen to them talk about this place that they've owned for like 100 years, and Michael Collins being in the snug drinking and all these stories. And then you're like, yeah. And it just, it shone a light on a part of it that anecdotally I know exists. I know that there's so much activity in Ireland that's curtailed. My industry has been decimated live. So I know these things exist, but it's abstract because you're at home and you're reading about it, you're seeing it on the news. So to actually be in a situation and talk to someone who's like, I don't know if we'll get through this, or I don't know if, some big corporation's going to come in and buy my license. It was tough to hear, and added an extra poignance and weight to the whole situation, which I feel, again, you can hear in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And finally, as much as I love that performance, I love seeing you live. I saw you live accidentally at Riot last year. You were a special guest.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh.
Oh, my God. I remember actually crying through that. It was just an amazing performance. And
thank you.
I suppose I came out of that very hopeful. And I love that you're so hopeful in that you've booked a tour for next year. Tell me about this. I really hope it happens.
Listen. I feel good about it this week with like all the conversations of like vaccines and like ways to, get on top of this stuff. So I certainly feel better about it than I did like a week ago. it's a funny thing because it's all going to be about, how quickly countries can find some sort of normalcy in the new year. We've certainly been aspirational. But the thing is, when we booked it, we were very aware of the reality, and it was like, if we have to shift the shows 4 or 5 months, then that's what we'll do, or even 2 or 3 months. We have those, things accounted for. But I wanted to give people something to focus on. Like, I wanted to give me something to focus on, but I wanted to, you know what I mean? Like, the idea, like, when I see people doing things in the new year, I look at it and go, okay, there's the possibility of normalcy. And that's incredibly exciting to me. So I wanted to do that. I was like, listen, we'll put these up together. It'll give me and my team something to do. I was able to pay, my musicians for 2 weeks of rehearsing, which otherwise we wouldn't have done. And, we still didn't need, we did it during the summer because I was like, these people are incredibly talented people that have put their lives into this, and they're sitting around doing like nothing. So it gave me the opportunity to do some work with them and to make us all feel like we're part of something. So it's been as beneficial to me as hopefully it was to people to see dates. So whether people buy tickets or not, it's almost like, obviously, yeah, you want the shows to be like what you want them to be, but I understand that it's weirdly speculative, but it just felt important to do it and to just put a marker on the ground. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
James, I could talk to you forever, but I know you started this conversation by saying your day is jam-packed. So reluctantly, I'm going to let you go, but I want to say thank you for the hope, and thank you for the music and for what you put out there. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you. Me too.